Whoopi Goldberg is not a good friend to Joy.
That is absurd.
I would like her to do a little homework. Because she said something yesterday that really pissed me off.
Think how ironic that Whoopi Goldberg and Joy Behar and the rest of the ladies on The View spend their time calling Republicans.
Joy Behar, who thinks Donald Trump is trying to destroy the country.
But they have been wrong about everything they have said over the last couple of years.
She's probably been put in there because, according to Donald Trump, she's a 10.
These women are completely out of touch with reality. And you're right, ABC should wake up.
You know, when you're a certain age, you use words that you know from when you were a kid or you remember saying, and that's what I did today, and I shouldn't have. I should have thought about it a little longer.
Not really making the world a better place.
Right.
You're just allowing these financial institutions to enact control over corporations. And it's a really shifty, weird way they're doing it.
Karoline Leavitt was never the type to stay quiet when things got messy. In a media landscape driven by personalities who conform, bow, and censor themselves to fit a certain narrative, Leavitt broke every rule. When she stepped onto the national stage, many underestimated her. They called her young, inexperienced, and too extreme. But now, those same critics are scrambling to keep up as she launches one of the most explosive legal campaigns in modern media history, an $800 million lawsuit that's already sending shockwaves through the highest offices at ABC, shaking the foundations of The View, and exposing fractures in the mainstream media's polished facade. And despite the growing pressure, Karoline refuses to blink. She refuses to step down. And most of all, she refuses to back down. It all began with what seemed like just another loud morning on The View's soundstage.
I would like this young lady this is her first job, I would like her to do a little homework. Because she said something yesterday that really pissed me off. And that was, she said, there will be no wokeness here.
Oh, yeah.
Let me explain something to you. Because without that wokeness, you might not have that job.
Yeah.
Because women were not invited to that table. Women were not invited to many tables in this nation. The reason we fought and busted our behinds to make sure that you didn't have to worry about this. And now to hear you talk about it and to hear anybody talk about the wokeness was put in place for a reason. Because black people couldn't get into colleges. Because women could not get into the colleges they wanted to go to. This is all women. Yeah. See, this is not black, Asian women. This is all women. Women were not invited to this party. It was a man's world, and we busted our asses to make sure that this was a person's world.
He's trying to destroy the country. Now, why is he doing that? Just as a person in the audience, like, watching this.
Yeah.
So there's a couple of theories.
Yes.
First of all, if he tanks the entire, what do you call it?
Economy,
the stock market, then all his billionaire friends can swoop in and buy everything low. That's not an original idea. That's Hakeem Jeffries said that.
Genius analysis there, Joy. You really are
Who is in charge? Because I've been saying it for a while.
Yes, you have.
I've been saying that I think Elon Musk believes he's president. I do.
Well, you've been calling him vice president.
I've called him vice president. I called him president because I don't know what JD is doing. I hardly ever say. I don't remember last time we even talked about JD.
You're right. He's planning the presidency when they get rid of Trump.
So you think it's Musk Vance?
Possible.
Hey, you know who? Stay away from the stairways.
Whoopi Goldberg and her co-hosts were doing what they always do, tearing into conservatives with smug disdain, peppering the conversation with condescending jokes, dramatic outrage, and thinly veiled insults toward anyone on the right. It's their formula, and it usually works. But when the table turned to Karoline Leavitt, they went further than they ever had before. They didn't just criticize her politics. They attacked her character. They mocked her appearance, questioned her morality, and used words that sounded a lot more like defamation than commentary. And that's where everything changed. Karoline didn't just respond with a tweet. She didn't settle for a video rant. She did what very few public figures have dared to do. She filed a massive, multi-million-dollar defamation lawsuit, and not just against the show's hosts. The lawsuit named ABC executives. It pointed to a long-standing pattern of political targeting. It accused The View of crossing a dangerous line, not once, but repeatedly, and with intent. And the number? A staggering $800 million. The moment that figure hit the headlines, the internet exploded. The mainstream media immediately tried to downplay it. They buried the story, CNN barely touched it, MSNBC framed it as a frivolous PR stunt. But behind the scenes, it was anything but. ABC executives went into emergency meetings. Internal memos circulated among legal departments. Showrunners for The View were suddenly asking questions they hadn't thought about in years. Who had signed off on that segment? Who reviewed the script? Who made the final call to air it uncensored? Because now everything was under a microscope, and Karoline Leavitt was holding the lens. Public opinion wasn't as predictable as the networks hoped. A wave of support surged in Karoline's direction. Conservative voices amplified the lawsuit across platforms. But what surprised everyone was the flood of moderates, independent voters, suburban moms, even some lifelong Democrats who started speaking out. They weren't defending Karoline's politics necessarily, but they were sick of the double standard. They were tired of watching The View tear into young conservative women with glee while demanding kid glove treatment for their own hosts. And just like that, Karoline became something bigger than a political commentator. She became a cultural lightning rod. As the days passed, ABC's legal team scrambled to build their defense. But cracks were already forming. Former staffers from The View started coming forward with statements. Whispers about toxic workplace behavior and biased editorial decisions began to circulate. One anonymous producer revealed that attacking young right-wing women had practically become an unspoken segment strategy in their pitch meetings. Another hinted at a leaked email chain where executives discussed Karoline's growing media presence and how they needed to shut her down before she gains more traction. If those emails exist, and if Karoline's legal team can get their hands on them, this case could go nuclear.
ABC having just paid $15 million for a defamation lawsuit. But I guess that's too much to ask from The View.
They likened President Trump to Hitler. They have mocked him. They have shamed him. They have lied about him consistently on their show. And it was a joy to watch them on November the 6th when they realized that tens of millions of Americans do not listen to the lies that they have spewed. These women are completely out of touch with reality. And you're right, ABC should wake up. They just paid $15 million to President Trump's future library. That's a great thing for the American people. I can also assure the American people that they're going to be hearing directly from the leader of the free world. And the press likes to hear that too. That's something that has not happened over the past 4 years. We've had an incompetent, senile president, as proven by that scathing Wall Street Journal report that came out today and you discussed on the show earlier.
Meanwhile, Whoopi Goldberg, long considered the unshakable matriarch of the show, seemed visibly rattled. In a recent taping, her tone shifted. She paused more often. She avoided mentioning Karoline's name, and for a brief moment, her usual fire was missing. Sources close to the production claim Whoopi has privately begged ABC for legal protection, fearing she might be personally named in an amended lawsuit. Others say she's threatened to walk away from the show entirely if the network doesn't make the situation disappear. But the problem is, it's not going away. Not this time. Karoline's legal team is expanding. A new round of high-profile attorneys joined the case this week, including names who have taken down media giants in the past. The $800 million figure is no accident. It's calculated. And while ABC is hoping for a quick settlement and a gag order, Karoline has made it crystal clear. She wants this in court. She wants discovery. She wants depositions. She wants the world to see what happens behind the cameras at The View. And above all, she wants accountability. But here's where it gets even uglier. Behind the scenes, political operatives are now involved. There are rumors that Democratic strategists have contacted ABC, warning them that this lawsuit could damage their messaging ahead of the next election cycle. If The View collapses, or if the hosts are forced into public legal fights, it could cast a shadow over the broader liberal media ecosystem. Some are even suggesting that White House officials have taken notice, worried about how Karoline's sudden rise might energize younger conservative voters. And Karoline knows it. She's not just fighting for her own name anymore. She's framing this as a war for free speech, for equal treatment, for truth in media. Her supporters are calling her the conservative Erin Brockovich. And the more the establishment tries to silence her, the louder her voice becomes. Social media clips of her speeches are going viral. Hashtags like #ShutDownTheView and Karoline Truth are trending almost daily. She's not running for office, but she's winning a war in the court of public opinion. And yet, the backlash has begun. Left-leaning influencers are now targeting Karoline with personal smears. They're digging into her past, weaponizing old interviews, trying to paint her as unstable or extreme. But it's not landing. If anything, it's backfiring. Every attack only strengthens her case. Every insult reminds viewers of the very behavior she's suing over. The View's hosts, once untouchable media icons, are now on the defensive, and the cracks are showing. Behind every legal case of this magnitude, there's always a turning point. A single moment when everything changes. For Karoline Leavitt, that moment came during a live interview on a conservative media outlet. With 0 notes in front of her and fire in her voice, she laid it all out. She spoke not only about the lawsuit, but about what it represented. She didn't flinch. She didn't stutter. She didn't hedge her words. She said The View had become a propaganda machine that specialized in bullying young women with opposing views. And she said the lawsuit wasn't just for her. It was for every conservative woman who had been mocked, smeared, and erased by mainstream media. The clip of that interview spread like wildfire. Even outlets that hated her couldn't ignore it. The energy was undeniable. Millions watched it within hours. Comment sections exploded with support. And behind closed doors at ABC, things got worse. A leaked internal Slack message revealed panicked conversations among producers. One staffer even asked if they should pull all segments related to Karoline from their archives, fearing those tapes could become evidence. Another questioned why legal hadn't stepped in sooner to control the damage. For a show known for its control over narratives, they were quickly losing their grip.
Today on Truth Social, Trump wrote, "A great time to buy." People are starting to get mad.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
You want them to get mad.
But how mad will people get, and how broke will people get, and how many jobs will be lost? And then he can say, well, there's too much chaos, and now we're going to have martial law in this country, and he becomes a dictator. I mean, I don't know. That may be out of the bounds.
Anything is possible.
But it's possible.
Yeah.
So just as somebody watching the news, that's what I see.
You know, if you've got good friends around you, they are honest with you when you go off the rails. They don't feed your paranoid delusions. It's clear that Whoopi Goldberg is not a good friend to Joy because she encouraged that latest bout of crazy.
But Karoline wasn't done yet. Days after that interview, she made another bold move. She announced that her legal team would be filing subpoenas for production notes, backstage footage, and raw audio from the day the defaming segment aired. In media, those files are considered sacred, unedited, unfiltered, and often brutally honest. If those tapes get into the courtroom, and if the commentary behind the scenes shows intent, malice, or premeditated bias, ABC won't just be dealing with a civil lawsuit. They'll be fighting for their credibility as a news organization. The View, once the uncontested queen of daytime political talk, now found itself in survival mode. Public confidence was slipping. Ratings were beginning to dip. Major advertisers were quietly pulling back, not canceling entirely, but delaying renewal conversations, waiting to see how the lawsuit played out. For a billion-dollar network built on advertiser dollars, that hesitation was louder than any headline. And yet, Whoopi Goldberg and her co-hosts kept going. Business as usual. But now every word they spoke seemed strained, filtered, rehearsed. There was no more fire, just fear. Somewhere along the line, the story stopped being about Karoline's original complaint. It evolved into something bigger. The mainstream media had always positioned itself as the gatekeeper of truth, but here was a young woman calling their bluff, and doing it legally. Every development in the case opened up a new can of worms. More insiders came forward. One former ABC executive even claimed the network kept an internal watch list of rising conservative voices to monitor and potentially suppress through coordinated narrative framing. If true, that would suggest a systemic media bias operating at the highest levels. Meanwhile, Karoline was not just surviving the storm, she was rising in it. Book deals were being offered, speaking engagements doubled, conservative leaders began openly citing her case as a pivotal moment for free speech. Even political commentators who had previously been skeptical of her were now calling her one of the most important voices in the fight against media corruption. And yet, through it all, Karoline maintained the same composure. No gloating, no theatrics. Just laser focus on one goal: exposing the truth. By the third week of the lawsuit dominating headlines, ABC had quietly brought in crisis management teams. These were the same professionals they used during past scandals: experts in optics, damage control, and narrative redirection. The View's team was instructed to stick to safer topics, avoid anything overtly political, and especially steer clear of mentioning Karoline on air. But that silence only fueled more speculation. On social media, people began asking the obvious. If The View did nothing wrong, why were they suddenly so afraid to talk? At the heart of this chaos, Karoline's legal team was building what they claimed was an airtight case. Depositions were being prepared, witness lists grew, journalists started filing FOIA requests for any communications between ABC and outside political entities. The case was snowballing. What started as one woman's legal retaliation had turned into a full-blown media reckoning, and the longer ABC waited to respond publicly, the more they seemed guilty in the eyes of the public. And then came the twist no one saw coming. A hacker group known only as C4 posted a chilling message online. They claimed to have intercepted communications between executives at ABC and political operatives tied to high-level Democratic figures. They didn't post the documents, yet, but the threat alone sent the internet into a frenzy. People speculated wildly. Could this be the smoking gun Karoline needed? Or was it just a bluff to capitalize on the chaos? Karoline herself issued no statement about the hackers, but her team did post a cryptic message on social media. The truth doesn't fear exposure. Suddenly, The View wasn't just facing a PR nightmare, it was staring down a potential scandal of historic proportions. If those alleged communications were real, it would prove the worst fears of millions, that media giants and political elites were working hand in hand to destroy opposition voices. That defamation wasn't a slip, it was a strategy. Behind the scenes, ABC's boardroom was in crisis. Meetings were happening daily. Shareholders were demanding answers. Legal counsel urged for settlement discussions to begin immediately. But Karoline's team wasn't biting. They didn't want a payout. They wanted exposure, accountability, public reckoning. And that's exactly what terrified the network. As the dust settles for now and legal teams retreat to prepare for war behind the scenes, one thing is crystal clear. This isn't just about a TV show, a lawsuit, or even a single defamation. It's about power. Who holds it, who uses it to silence others, and who finally dares to say, enough. Karoline Leavitt has drawn a line in the sand, and she's not moving. In a media landscape dominated by the loudest voices and deepest pockets, she has chosen to fight not with noise, but with facts, law, and resolve. Her message isn't just aimed at Whoopi Goldberg or ABC. It's aimed at an entire system that has long thrived on unchallenged narratives and unchecked influence. As The View scrambles to preserve its legacy and ABC attempts to contain the fallout, Karoline is building something entirely different, a movement. One rooted in courage, accountability, and the belief that truth doesn't belong to the powerful. It belongs to anyone brave enough to stand up and fight for it. What started as a single moment on a talk show has turned into a national reckoning. And whether the courtroom delivers a historic judgment or not, Karoline has already changed the conversation. Because now, millions are watching, and they're no longer silent. Do you think Karoline will win this $800 million lawsuit? Let me know. I'm reading every comment.